Good morning, everyone. Today I will give you the brief idea about the poem Dover Beach and the Victorian poet Matthew Arnold and his thoughts and his worries about the present area, that is the era, that is the Victorian, the present era he's talking about, that is the Victorian era, and what is his thought and how he is worried that people are losing faith in religion and what will be the outcome of that I'm going to discuss in this summary. First of all, let us start with the Victorian poet and his poetry. What his literary styles reflected, what was his thought about the religions, and was it prevalent, or he's combining his sensibility and intellectual powers to lead to make the people aware about that what is going to happen next, how the human beings are going to face that human miseries and all that. So let's start. So Victorian poet and his poetry reflected literary, social, and religious trends and beliefs prevalent in it. Combining his sensibility as a poet with his intellectual powers as a scholar and critic, he observed the facts of contemporary life and presented them in his poetry. The Victorian age to which he belonged was a period of great changes in all fields of life. So, when I'm talking about the Victorian age, in that particular era, scientific revolution were taking place and people were getting more and more engrossed and moved to they were moving towards the industrialization. So there were changes in all fields of life. Religious, they were losing faith in religion, they were moving towards science, social, and literary. So the fields where there were great changes were religious, scientific, social, and literary. The loss of religious faith and the decline of spiritual and moral values because of the growth of materialism are significant. So, the most important thing was people were moving towards, they were becoming more and more commerce, they wanted to earn more and more money. They've started believing in status quo, and that's why the most significant thing which has been discussed in the poem is the loss of religious faith and the decline of spiritual and moral values. The various social evils caused by the industrial and mechanical progress filled his heart with gloom. So he was unhappy at that time, and that's why, while thinking this, he wrote the poem Dover Beach. The spiritual unrest, aimlessness, and conflicts in the world around him troubled his mind. The romantic poetry of the preceding age, with all its subjectivity and emotional glow, could not satisfy his classical temper. He could not but react against the conditions prevailing in his age and express his reaction in his poetry as well as in critical reaction has found its way into his poetry as well as in prose. His reaction is critical and not emotional, and in this critical reaction, he has found its way into his verse. His critical method has two aspects. Now, this is also very important. So, when he is criticizing the scenario and what is happening, he has criticized and has divided it into two aspects: his critical method of criticizing the things, reviewing the situation existing in the fields of literature and society, and commenting or passing judgments on it. Thus, he sticks in practice to his theory of poetry and makes his poetry a criticism of literature as well as life. Now, Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach is a poem set near Dover along the southeast coast of England, where Arnold and his new wife spent their honeymoon in 1851. So, this is the setting of the poem. It is believed that the poet wrote the early draft of Dover Beach while here, overlooking the English Channel towards the coast of France and about 26 miles away. And that is why he has mentioned in his poem that. Gleams upon the straits on the French coast, the light gleams and is gone, and the cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast on the tranquil bay. So Arnold and his wife were often considered the models for the speaker and the listener in the poem. Dover Beach has often been read as a kind of seismological record of the shock waves in traditional religion brought about by the new science in the mid 19th century. So seismological record of the shock waves in tradition. What were the changes which were happening during the new science in the mid 19th century? So this was troubling the mind of poets, and he was thinking that what is going to happen next, how human is going to face the miseries which are going to come next, because they have become more and more practical, and that's why they have lost faith in god, and this is going to lead to some of the other trouble. Arnold's Dover Beach is one of the fine piece of Worth's criticism of contemporary life and society. It is an example of Arnold's concept of criticism of life, glooms, joylessness, despair, the loss of faith, and excessive reliance on the scientific and materialistic formulas have been exposed to the poet's critical attack. So the basic ideas where he was attacking was the loss of faith, and he believed in Christianity and he was a great believer in God, and excessive reliance on scientific and materialistic formulas. And people have started relying more and more on science, and they were engrossed in the materialistic world. And this is what was attacked by the poet. Arnold used the natural landscape symbolically for conveying the moral instruction, and that's what we can see. The sea, he has used the imagery of the sea, the moon, and again, grating road, the pebbles, the sea. So we can say that he used natural landscape and which symbolized the moral instruction, and that is why we can say eternal pebbles coming back and the waves throwing the grating road. These all are the symbols which are used by the poet to convey the moral instruction. In Dover Beach, Arnold describes the tranquil English Channel at Dover. The tide was full and the moonlight was reflected on the water. The poet asked his beloved to listen to the harsh sounds of waves, alternatively advancing and retreating and carrying away the pebbles from the sea. Harsh sound. It means something which was there in the mind of poet, something which he has sensed, and what he was trying to make his wife understand about that particular harsh sounds of wave. It means the turbulence which was coming to the life of the common human being. Away the pebbles, the sea, beach, and fling them back to the beach. The poet wanted his beloved to notice how the pebbles move along with the waves of the sea. The process of advancing and retreating continues ceaselessly. In spite of harsh sound, there is a rhythm in it, even though the sound was harsh, but it was rhythmic. Poet found a note of sadness in the rhythmic movement. He recalls that the famous tragic playwright Sophocles. So again, in the second stanza, poet is talking about the Greek tragedy writer Sophocles, and he says that once he was sitting by the side of the sea, and he has imagined the eternal notes of human misery, and that is what the poet is telling, that he has heard the note of sadness in the waves of the Aegean Sea, which symbolized for him the rise and fall in human life. So the waves of sadness is symbolizing for him the rise and fall in human life. It is a noble and profound application of ideas to life. So it was the conflict between the faith and doubt, which was serving no purpose to the human race. So in this stanza, Sophocles long ago heard it in on the Aegean and brought it into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound of thought, hearing it by the distant northern sea. So here the poet is talking about the temporal space of the time and the clash between the faith and the doubt, which was serving no purpose to the human being. Then Arnold returns to the present and remarks the melancholy sound of the sea produces in him thought about the suffering in human life and the miserable lot of man on this earth. Thus, both Sophocles and Arnold experience the same lot of human misery on this earth. In his essay on Wordsworth, Arnold says the great poet receives his distinctive character of superiority from fixed by laws of poetic beauty and poetic truth. It is Arnold's application of ideas to life to that contributes to the criticism of life. So the poet next compares the sea with the religion. He considers the sea as a symbol of religious faith. Once the sea of faith was full, it means people in the past had a deep religious faith. But in the Victorian age, the sea of faith has run dry. It means they are moving forward towards science. They have started thinking practically. So people are skeptical. It is now leaving the world barren and dry. It means they have become more self-centered. They do not want to think about others. They are thinking about their own status quo and how to make their own commerce. With the decline of religion, men are getting more and more materialistic. When the waves of the sea recede, pebbles on the dry shore are exposed. The religious faith declined, and the loss of higher values entailed miseries, doubts, despair, and dull materialistic life. Doubts and despair disturb the tranquil and harmonious life. which was fortified against such evils by higher religious values. It is nothing but the situation of poet's own age. Thus, it is a criticism of life in the Victorian age. What Arnold observed was true. So, he quoted the lines from the text that the sea of faith was once true at the full and round, earth's shore lay like the folds of bright girdle furled, but now I only hear its melancholy long withdrawn. So the message is completely clear that what he wanted to say. Arnold compares and contrasts the religious situation of Victorian age with the previous age, when people believed in the religion fully and finds that it is declining. Arnold offers a solution to the problem by decreasing the situation in the world. So, what was the situation? Love was getting diminished, and people have lost belief in themselves also, and that's why he is requesting his wife that they should be true to each other, whatever happens. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams. So various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. So when the poet says, "Ah, love, let us be true to one another," through these lines he exemplifies his profound love for her and requests her to be faithful to him, saying that for the sake of their marriage they need to be faithful to the other. So he wants to give the message to everyone that to mankind, for the mankind it's necessary, for the existence of humanity it is necessary that everyone should be faithful to each other. So it will reduce the conflict between their ideas and their thoughts. To a particular extent, human beings are inferior to nature and the spiritual beliefs. So the desertion of doctrine of religion with the help of industrial revolution is only an effective act against the power of overwhelming nature. So industrial revolution is nothing, it is only that we are overpowering the nature. We want to rule the mother earth, we want to rule the nature because we want to prove ourselves supreme. So the poet is telling that we should not feel supreme, we should have respect for religion, we should have respect for nature. And spirituality and faith should remain in humanity, so paying no heed to it would result in the vulnerability of modern man, which means it can destroy the modern civilization. The poem continues explaining a battle worth fighting for what one accepts as the truth. Whether you think of the poem about love and the wife of Matthew Arnold, or whether it's a poem signifying the ongoing religious dilemma of that time period. So, in the end of the poem, the only person you can count on is yourself and the one you love. All the mortals live in this world in a dark state of mind, and the struggle for survival is no less different from ignorant armies that fight throughout the night, even though they are not knowing that to whom they are fighting. Arnold warns against the situation and advises to be loyal and faithful in love because what around them is dreamy and is full of illusion. Love is the only source of solace in life. In such atmosphere of disbelief and incertitude, the poet says that the only thing that will survive is love. Arnold suggests that with the help of true love, man can live well. And Arnold finds to his horror that the traditional values and religion are fast crumbling down. There is no joy or comfort anywhere. In such a state of chaos and disintegration, he hugs the found belief that love can sustain mankind. For love is unchanging. The world has lost its joy, love, security, and peace. The world is a darkling plain. In the world, men are fighting in the dark, completely ignorant of whom they are fighting against and what exactly they are fighting for. It is nothing but the Victorian situation. So, what is important? The situation and the thoughts of the human being. So, it is a cross section of Victorian life, and hence it is a criticism of life. So Arnold does not take that Victorian age lightly. From the beginning, the tone is gloomy, melancholy, and sad and serious enough. It is a criticism of life in the sense that what Arnold has described. So we can say that Dover Beach poem is marked by reality, aim, melancholy, intensity, and vastness. When I talk about reality, then it is that we are describing it as a true to the Victorian age. Aim in the sense that he has the intention to expose the drawbacks of the Victorian age. When I talk about intensity, it means the tragic vision of the world gets darkened. For example, hath really neither joy nor love nor certitude. When I talked about vastness, it means it is not related to only the poet, but it has become the universal poem where poet is asking everyone to start loving each other, because that is the only thing which will remain forever. Otherwise, everything will be destroyed. Truth of substance is a superb artistic skill and craftsmanship. The abstract thinking is closely linked with an actual personal situation and is conveyed through concrete description and imagery. It means he has started with his married life and he correlated everything with other descriptions by using the imagery, auditory imagery, visual imagery, nature, and everything. So you can say that it has got a it can put a psychological effect on anyone who is reading. So we can conclude it that it has a psychological depth of feeling and universally applicable thought content, and both are presented in a skillful artistic manner. Thus, Dover Beach has truth of matter and depth of expression. It is nothing but a criticism of life. So we can say that poet was a Victorian poet who defined poetry as a criticism of life and has wrote many poems to his definition of poetry. And his poetry is a criticism of life in the Victorian age, which is marked by loss of religious faith, loss of spiritual and religious values due to growth of materialism, scientific spirit, industrialization, mechanical progress, unrest, aimlessness, and conflicts. So the poet reacted to it and was repelled by the conditions of contemporary life, and his critical attitude towards life and society is responsible for critical rather than constructive nature of his works. Due to his ability to combine the qualities of a poet and critics, he is considered as one of the great poets of the Victorian age. So, in addition to his other poems, Dover Beach is the best example of his concept of criticism of life, and as it contains an expression of his favorite theme of loss of faith in the material world and the feeling of melancholy and despair. It reveals his habit of using natural scenes symbolically and embodies his critical attitude towards the world around him and human destiny in general.